time. I'm going to swing the gavel. I called this special meeting of the Lee County Board of Commissioners to order on this 10th day of April, 2012. Commissioner Hayes has been assigned invocations for the month of April, so if you'll begin us, and then we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I invite you to bow your heads for a minute of silence to pray, meditate, or just be at peace in whatever way you are most comfortable, giving thanks for our many blessings. Thank you.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to respectfully request that my colleagues today will refrain from debating on this issue, and I also ask that nobody entertain any motions on any action. It is on our agenda for Monday, and at that time we'll have a chance to debate this issue. But there's been a lot of misinformation, innuendos, and other information floating around. So my sole purpose in calling this meeting today was to get more facts out there to the public. And so I've asked John and Lisa to put together some information that hopefully will be beneficial to everybody. Commissioner Hayes has Environmental Affairs Board meeting at 5. Doc has a Health Board meeting. And I've got to be in West End for a Sanford Mental Health meeting tonight. So hopefully we'll be out of here by 5 or so.
Well, the PowerPoint that Lisa and I put together, we'll go through quickly.
Okay.
Well, before we get started, Madam Chair, if motions are restricted, so what purpose did we come here today to share information that couldn't have been shared on Monday?
I just felt sometimes when you have something on the agenda, people come with their opinions already made up. And I think also it's an opportunity to get a little bit of information out there in the public domain so that if you have any citizens in the county or the city who, or Broadway, who have some questions or whatever, they could maybe get those answered before Monday. So it's just to get more information out there and to get the public a little bit more engaged, maybe. That's my intent anyway.
And I understand and appreciate that. I'm not sure that I have attended such a meeting in the past. I don't know that, I'm not even sure is that something that we can be restricted from?
The purpose of a special meeting must be stated in the notice of the meeting.
Got that.
And it is limited to that purpose unless all commissioners are present and vote to change the agenda. There can be a motion to change the agenda to add any topic by majority vote.
No, sir, not topics, motions regarding the subject matter. That's what I'm referring to.
That's a more difficult question, Commissioner. It's difficult because...
I withdraw it for the time being, for the sake of time.
All right, sir.
I'll get back with you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. John, I'll turn everything over to you.
Okay. You have a copy of the PowerPoint in front of you, but for the public's consumption, we'll go through it here. First slide is the sales tax distribution statute and North Carolina General Statute 105-472. Just starts discussion about how the county has the authority to distribute sales taxes either by ad valorem or per capita, and the Board of Commissioners shall, by resolution adopted during the month of April of each year, determine which of the two methods of distribution shall be in effect in the county during the next succeeding fiscal year. If the board doesn't act in April, May 1st, the Department of Revenue just assumes that we want to keep it as is, and that's how it will be distributed. Once the resolution is passed, it must be delivered to the Department of Revenue Secretary within 15 calendar days after its adoption. These are the counties that distribute on a per capita basis. You can see we're in this list, and then the next list is the ad valorem. It's almost an even split between the two in the state.
Madam Chair, if I might jump in here with one comment. When I first saw that chart, that set of charts, I was kind of surprised because I thought there would be more that were in the ad valorem category. And then after checking around with a couple of the counties that are still in the per capita, I found out that the reason they stay in that way is because it's more favorable. So just being on one list or another doesn't necessarily mean that you favor giving less or more money to your municipalities. The reason that a lot of the counties stay in one method or the other is because it's more favorable to the county. So that list in and of itself doesn't mean that they believe in giving away more money. That just means that they happen to use that method which makes the most sense to that county.
That's correct. And then we have one county, Onslow, a few years back, because they were changing their distribution method almost every year. The municipalities and the county got together with their local state delegation and developed a method that 50% of the sales tax is distributed per capita and the other 50% is by ad valorem. So they're the Lone Ranger out there, and that was done by local act. Here are the county mandated programs. We get this list out of our budget annual financial statement. Saying earlier today, it's almost easier to tell you which departments we have that we voluntarily operate, and those four are the library, Parks and Recreation, Youth Services, and Senior Services. So everything else we do has a component of being mandated by the state to operate. Yes, sir?
Forgive me, I'm still dealing with another issue, but going back to Onslow, they did the blended.
Yes, sir.
Does any of the information regarding all these counties that you mentioned, are any of them providing their approach to making those decisions? For example, how does Onslow decide what year they're going to do sales tax, what year they're not going to do?
What they were doing up until they passed this local act was the county was taking a look every year which method would provide them the most revenue, and then they were changing that every April, whichever method gave them the most revenue. The towns and the city of Jacksonville got together, lobbied their local delegation, and along with the county agreed to do this blended so that they wouldn't be making this change every year. The biggest issue with changing every year is it becomes more and more difficult for the towns or the municipalities in your county to estimate revenues from the coming year. So you keep going back and forth. It makes it difficult for projections. It makes it difficult to budget.
Do you know if they held meetings prior to making their final decision?
Or any of the other counties?
Onslow or any others?
No, sir, I don't know that. I know that I followed the Onslow County deal. It was something the association kept us apprised of, and they were obviously meeting quite a bit with each other up until the time the legislation was passed. But the others, I don't know.
The research that I did, I couldn't find any counties that had public hearings on this. They just brought it to their board, and Henderson County, I don't think I brought those all with me today, but it didn't appear that any of the counties that I found that switched to this, had any kind of public hearing or dialogue within the municipalities.
John, which three items did you say was not mandated?
We have 4 departments that are not mandated: Youth Services, Senior Services, the Library, and Parks and Recreation. Every other department or program we operate has, some level of requirement from the state or the federal government that we operate.
Thank you.
And then under North Carolina law, when a municipality incorporates, the only function they have to provide is fire inspections. Everything else they do, because they're trying to provide a higher level of service than what the county was providing when they incorporated. Here's a chart that shows the current sales tax distribution. It's in the ad valorem distribution column. And if we change to per capita distribution, which is the fourth column over, you see how that would, actually I got that backwards. Per capita, then to ad valorem, and then the net change. So the per capita on the right side is how we're distributing now. The ad valorem, which is in the middle column, would be what it would look like if it was changed. You can see the change at the top results in a change to the county of 1.4 million. And then how that is distributed, you have to go down the chart to see where it's split between Lee County and the fire districts and the central business district for the city. Any questions on that chart?
So the central business district would actually come out ahead on this also.
They pick up 16,296. We're going to talk about how these numbers could fluctuate quite a bit here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about pros and cons between the methods of distribution. There's the fire district's impact, and if you go to the fourth column, you see what the tax per penny levy is currently, and with the pickup in the ad valorem distribution, what the potential property tax reduction would be off to the right. Right there. A lot was said the other day at the city's meeting about finances, so what I decided to do was just go ahead and put some key financial comparisons into some sheets and talk about first our fund balance. Our fund balance right now is a little over 10 million. Sanford's is a little over 9 million, and the town of Broadway's is a little over 600,000. And just looking at those raw numbers, it doesn't tell you a whole lot. So this is just a comparison graphically. But and this is the comparison based on percentage of total expenditures. And as you can see, the county's running up close to 20% of total expenses. The city is running a little over 40, and now just went below 40%, and the town is in the mid-60s. A good comparison in your fund balance is if you look at your peer group. Our peer group, county's population, 50,000 to 99,000. The red line here indicates our peer group average, and then where our fund balance is compared to the average. So we've been running consistently below our average. The city of Sanford is once again in the blue. You can see in 2006 they were right on the average. They started to grow, and then they've, I guess they took the initiative to start bringing their fund balance back down, and their fund balance went down about $1.7 billion last year.
What was the peer group?
Their peer group is population 25,000 to 49,999. And then the town of Broadway's peer group is 1,000 to 2,499. And you can see in the blue, they were running above the average, and then they come down. I think a lot of that is you see all three entities starting to use a little bit more fund balance for capital and to balance their budget as revenues have gone down. And you'll see that in just a minute when we get to property taxes and sales taxes.
Relates to the recession.
Yes, sir. And you can see that here. I think this is a good chart. I know it's difficult for the citizens to see out here, but what I was trying to show here is how much of our total net revenue is made up of sales tax revenues and property tax revenues. And we were at a high with sales tax revenues, about 19.84% of our total revenues. And now you can see that with the effect of the recession, we're down to 12.26. The city of Sanford was a high, a little over 20, almost 23% sales tax, and now we're down to 20.87. And the town was 28.26 as their high, is down to 24. So the recession has already had an impact on all of our sales tax revenues, and has just the recession itself has put more and more emphasis on property taxes. And you know, it was kind of ironic. We looking through here, you know, basically these two tax sources make up 70% of all of our budgets. So I think at one time with some of the other taxes that we used to share with the state, it was probably down closer to 60%. So over time, we're becoming more and more dependent on sales tax revenues and property tax revenues, as they are, our partners are. So if we made the switch, what would be some of the pros? You know, possible uses of the funds would be lower the county tax rate, lower the fire district tax rate. If we didn't lower the tax rate, one of the CIP requests we talked about last week was community colleges and what other needs, you know, we may be able to fund for the county.
Go back to the tax rates, please.
Yes, sir.
Lower the county tax, are we talking about the issue on the table today or future, past, or what is that?
That would be future possible use if you made the change. That's why I put possible, because I don't think there's anything on the table right now as to, there's been a lot of discussion, but I don't think there's a proposal before the board of what to do if we change the sales tax distribution.
Well,
No, I was just gonna say that, I think, because it doesn't say property tax, but I think that's what he was referring to as county property tax rate. And the ad valorem property taxes that we collect, and that had been a suggestion that I had made back 2 meetings ago, where I had proposed that we factor that into the advanced planning for the county manager to try to reduce the property tax rate, generally dollar for dollar for what the county would retain, so about 2 cents on the 100. But obviously, there have been other ideas as well, what to do with the redistributed sales tax revenues.
Well, I want to get lowering the county tax rate clear in my own mind. I think that I do understand it, but I'd like to hear it from those putting on the presentation. Would this impact all the citizens, city and county, the reduction in the tax rate?
Yes, sir.
And who would any one group benefit more than another, the city versus the county?
If you just lower the county's property tax rate, it's you know, pretty much the same over the county. I mean, it doesn't affect where you end up with the difference is if you lower the fire district rate. By lowering the fire district rate, you only benefit the unincorporated areas, not the incorporated areas.
And the industrial park, right? In the industrial park, you see the county property tax rate decrease as well as the fire tax, because they're covered by Northview.
Northview.
And so all of the people in the county, based on the numbers you have, there could be some that would see as much as a 4-cent tax decrease on their.
It would be over 4 cents. So any of the big, you know, I didn't look today before I came in here, but if you looked at the top 10 taxpayers in the county, if they're located outside the city of Broadway, or the town of Broadway, or the city of Sanford, they're the biggest benefactors of you know, taking those first 2 items and lowering the property tax rates.
What about the people inside the city of Sanford and town of Broadway?
They get a 2 cent decrease.
And the city would then look at what they need to do to replenish those funds.
That's correct.
And as I think I read one of their proposals said the tax rate could go up as much as 6 cents, or better than 6 cents.
It was 6.27, I believe, and I believe the town's was 13.
So at the end of the day, a lower tax rate for citizens outside the city of Sanford and town of Broadway would by far benefit more at the end of the day.
I don't know that you can conclude that.
I can conclude it with the numbers that I've.
Well, no, I mean, I think that would be a leading point. I would say that everyone equally shares in a property tax decrease. Now, there are others that get secondary or tertiary benefits from it, but if the city of Sanford chose, they could reduce taxes on top of the sales tax redistribution. It's a matter of reducing spending on things that are not necessary. So we can't conclude what the city will actually do, what they've talked about doing. We could continue to send them the sales tax revenues, and they could raise taxes. That's their discretionary authority as a jurisdiction.
I only spoke about what they proposed that could happen, which was a 6% increase.
Right, and it could be 8 cents or it could be no cents. I mean, they haven't made a decision on what to do.
The likelihood of it making no sense is pretty low.
I don't know about that.
Well, you don't know about what they're gonna do, period, because you're not on their board.
That's correct, but I would.
Well, you gotta stick to this board.
Well, I would, but see, you're the one bringing up about the point about the city. Let me offer this to you. We are here to represent all citizens of Lee County.
And that's
These-
what I'm looking to do.
Yes, sir. And I'm suggesting that, and, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's more to follow in this presentation, but just on sheer logic and reason, a property tax by general statute, the property taxes that we assess affect all county citizens equally, and or all property owners equally. And there are, because of special taxing districts, there are some others that would benefit from a redistribution of sales taxes. But that's independent of what decisions are made within the municipalities. And in the town of Broadway and the city of Sanford have to make their own decisions based on the budgetary realities that they have. Just like we had to make decisions several years ago when we had a decrease in sales taxes in this county. We had to make adjustments. And when you have reduced revenues because you're getting less from the state of North Carolina or you're getting less from sales taxes, you make adjustments. And you find those things which are not priorities and you reduce them.
Well, I will say that in the research that I did, there were some counties that switched that, I think it was Henderson County, where their fire districts actually were going to not come out as well under the new method, and they created interlocal agreements. So there are some counties who have interlocal agreements, kind of a hold harmless type of situation also. So that's a possibility also.
We should consider those things. I mean, if we're by virtue of a sudden change in property or sales tax distribution, if we're disarming one of the municipalities of an essential service that they can't replace in the same year, then we should negotiate with them directly about how to offset that harm that we might have done, whether it's in law enforcement or whether it's in some other area, so that they can maintain a level of service.
But wouldn't that be part of the reason we want to meet with them, to find out if they do have those situations?
Sure.
Yeah, we definitely need to do
Yeah.
that, but right now we're doing problem solving. So I think we need to finish our briefing here.
I'm almost finished. I think the cons, I do believe that if you change the sales tax distribution, there'll be some hard feelings between the city and the town towards us. It also will change, I believe, some of the policies that affect annexation for the city of Sanford. When a city annexes parts of a county, they basically get increases of revenue in 3 areas. One is ad valorem revenue, the other one is sales tax, and the other is PAL bill funds based on per capita and mileage of roads that they annex. But if the sales tax distribution is now based on ad valorem, they're less likely to annex residential areas that have high density because they don't get as much benefit out of it. To grow revenue, they'll need tax base, so they're going to go after the larger tax base areas. So, you know, it's going to put pressure on them to annex industrial and commercial areas versus residential areas. And you've seen in their annexation practices over the years, they've kind of gone after each equally, and I think that's going to, changing the distribution could affect the way they think about annexation.
But hasn't the law changed now? Aggressive annexation has been It hasn't been?
I was overturned by the court, they're repealing it.
Okay.
Well, and I also think that
Places they probably look at is Pfizer.
one of the things that you got, whether it's voluntary or involuntary annexation, the city's control of water and sewer can always make annexation voluntary. So
Unless it's challenged.
But the way they've done,
I think if they extending services, I think the law's on their side for annexation.
but hasn't their habit of doing this spot annexation presented some problems with their fire service delivery also?
I think it's created service issues all the way around because they're so wide now. So, it is a big city geographically. It goes a long way east to west. And it does provide some challenges that they're trying to deal with their fire department right now.
And for anybody to think that if somebody from Tennessee or somewhere is looking to relocate, and they may not look at the Lee County tax rate, they're gonna look at Sanford, and if anybody thinks that $1.29 is not a deterrent for locating somewhere, I would say that's a little bit naive in thinking. And I know, Commissioner Reeves, you have in the past requested that the EDC kind of take up this issue of annexation, because that's gonna be the one thing that prevents us from growing in the unincorporated areas, and I don't know that they've been willing to do that.
Well, I haven't part of my direct instruction and request to them. But here's the other side of the coin. They're going to have to negotiate with the same people we find ourselves in somewhat of a fight with. And it's not going to be an easy task. And I can understand why they may be reluctant to move forward. This board and the Sanford board, and perhaps even the town of Broadway board, are going to have to come to some kind of compromise very quickly. Or we're all going to be looking probably for new people to sit in these seats. It is, quite frankly, again, one of the worst situations I've seen in quite a few years. And I don't think what we're doing to include today is helping anything at all.
I would hope so. I like the last slide there about priorities. And I think that's something that we need to do as a board, is sit down and see what our priorities are for our citizens. Whether it's meeting, and I would propose meeting with both cities to figure out what the priorities are and the best way to get there. I get a little embarrassed whenever I have people come to me and say, well, why can't we improve the college? Why can't we build the college? Why can't we improve the civic center? And all these kinds of things. And then I take a look at all of the expenses that we've had in the schools, and the $3 million that we pay each year in interest. That interest doesn't help anybody. And I wouldn't do that on a percentage basis for my home. I certainly wouldn't want to do that for the citizens of Lee County. So I'm all in favor of sitting down and working with people to see what the best way is to go, but we can't continue doing what we're doing now and be able to accomplish anything that I can see. If you can show me a way to do it, fine, but I don't see any way right now to do it the way we're doing it.
Finishing up real quick, Madam Chairman, is the per capita distribution is easier to budget, as we discussed earlier. Ad valorem distribution is subject to tax base and tax rate changes each year. So, next year we're getting ready to go into a revow. Normally in revow, local governments take a look at their long-term needs, and if the town and the city were to raise their levy, that would affect the distribution. So it makes it more difficult to forecast, and it becomes much more volatile going forward, because the levy can change drastically from one year to the next, whereas population is a little bit more controlled. And I do think that by changing this, I gave you a list of all the local agreements we have with the city. I do think that there'll be effect on that as we go forward. And I did put that last as, where are we going next and what are our priorities? And I'll leave with a quote that Bill Cowan, former county manager, gave me one time, which was when I was telling him about some of the issues we were having with contract negotiations with the city, and just said strong cities and strong towns make for a strong county. So as we're going forward, having strong cities and strong towns helps us be strong and should be a priority for us. And I'll conclude with that and be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I would like for you to clear up something, maybe you or Lisa, a comment was made at the city council meeting on all these different articles that we get for sales tax, and 3 of those 4 are restricted, and how we can use that. Do you want to address that? To kind of set the record straight that we're just not getting all of that sales tax to spend as we want?
Well, Articles 40 and 42, there's a certain percentage in there of each that are restricted to school capital debt. So I think I was looking at our financial statement today, and it works out to about 1.6 or 1.7 million that has to go towards the school's debt or capital needs.
And when the county gave up the article that was funding Medicaid taxes, and we were required, though, to hold the city harmless for any revenues they might lose, even though it might not have been to our advantage, is it about a wash, or is it to our disadvantage that hold harmless?
That's a tough question.
Here she comes.
Come on down, Liz. I will let you handle that one.
Okay. According to the state's calculations, is to our advantage at this point. We were only held harmless, I think, 1 year on that switch over. It's very hard to say. The numbers that were used were older numbers prior to the recession. Prior to the recession, I would say that we were very much a break-even county. With the recession having hit and probably the increase in Medicaid costs due to the recession, I would say we probably are a benefactor of the change now, more so than I would have prior to the recession. So yes, I would say overall it was probably a good switch for us. Of course, we're not benefiting like some of the counties did with the switch, but I would say we did. Now, the other article that you're referring to that was restricted is the Article 46 sales tax that the citizens voted in. That is a restriction by you, the Board of County Commissioners, not by state law. So that tax could be used for other purposes based on your decision. So it's not restricted by state law. Only Articles 40 and 42 are restricted by law. Okay.
And the reason I ask about the Medicaid is I know that I also serve on the Social Services Board, and Brenda had requested some additional positions. One of them was in a Medicaid transportation, and I know that their demand and their costs are really escalating in that regard. So I'm wondering, if that's not going to start to be a bigger issue for us with the hold harmless.
I don't know that that position is related to the hold harmless situation. There are some new regulations in place that they're having to abide by, which is causing the issue in the Medicaid transportation. And there was some things that maybe the state wasn't requiring to be done that are now being required to keep the state and us on par with the feds. So I don't know how much that would impact it. Of course, as Medicaid costs increase, for everything that increases, we are benefiting because we're not having to pay our percentage share anymore. That's why I say, if you had asked me when it was all being considered, I had my doubts on whether or not it was a good thing for Lee County. 3-4 years later, and the economy the way it is, I would say that it was definitely to our benefit that we're no longer participating in Medicaid.
But the fact that the General Assembly or the feds, whoever it was, that requires us now to call and make sure that John or Susie shows up, but they're not reimbursing us for that cost of compliance.
Another unfunded mandate.
And another unfunded mandate. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize is the number of unfunded mandates that we have as a county. Any other questions?
I'm just thinking about what Commissioner Walker said about the city, that they have some things they can do to offset this. One of the things I'm thinking about is there's 16,000 or more county residents that use city water. City owns that. There, you know, like I said, they can do a lot of things to recoup that loss, and that would be one way they could do it. All they got to do is raise the water rates.
One of the contentions with people who are living in the county is their water rates are always so much higher than they are in the city, so I'd say they would have a major battle on their hands on that one.
Some of us might go back to wells,
Some of them don't have wells.
might drill wells.
You know, I live in the county, so I am partial. I know we have to represent everybody in the county, but one of the things that's always bothered me is when you have private industry that has to compete with a government subsidized industry. And I'm just gonna mention some taxes here that are paid. Tobacco Road, you know, pays a little over $36,000 each year in real and personal property taxes. Quail Ridge Golf Course pays a little over $17,000. Carolina Trace, almost $66,000. So to me, you know, if I was a city taxpayer, I may be questioning, you know, why some private industries have to compete with a subsidized business that can offer green fees and whatever a lot less, so. Anyway. Okay, any other questions?
Are you referring to the Sanford Golf Course?
Yes.
Well, Sanford Golf Course has been a part of this community ever since I've been a part of this community. You've got a lot of folks that can't afford to go out to Tobacco Road and pay $80 or $75 to play around the golf, but they can go out here to Sanford and pay $25 and play. There's a lot of folks like that, a lot of retirees. I've lived here all my life. I play all of them. But you know, I don't think that's a fair comparison.
But
You got
let me offer
80% of
this
the
though.
people that can't afford to play golf at all.
That's right. Actually, it's closer to 90%.
Yeah, they go to a basketball game, though, at UNC, I bet you.
But there's 90% of the population that does not use the golf course at all. So it's really subsidizing so that 10% can use it at a reduced rate. I mean, it's not used by that many different people. It's a subsidy that we give to a luxury opportunity. There's one other item that we didn't talk about today. I don't know how much more discussion we're going to get into about this thing, but I just
Up here in about 5 minutes.
sure. I just wanted to offer that in the Evergreen study that they did, that was a recommendation that they made. That's a way of saving a substantial amount of money. And you know, one of the reasons we brought in a third-party auditor was to help us identify candidate areas to reduce our burden, our tax burden on people. And I think we ought to take a serious look at their recommendation. I mean, they're looking at best practices around the state and candidate areas to save, and they recommended that. And another one, and it's a point that the county manager was gracious not to bring up, but I think we certainly need to discuss this at some point, and that is this whole concept of doing without. We are still on the tail end of a recession, hopefully on the tail end of it. Things always lag when you go through an economic recession. And what's happened here is we're on the downside of the difficulties that you have when with loss of jobs and the recovery still not there for work. Sales are down, and so sales tax revenues are down, though they're actually starting to recover a little bit. We're actually projecting, I think, some growth in sales. Now is not the time for us to say, well, we'll just keep doing business as usual. Now is the time for us to sharpen the pencil and find those things, still looking for things that we can cut our costs in. And this is one of those areas that we don't have to give money away. The state empowers us to make a decision about how to use or how to calculate our sales tax distributions. And if we can find a way to save or to not give away money, as in effect what is welfare to the city, and instead ask them to sharpen their pencils so they're doing without the same way the county has done without in the last couple of 3 years. I think the county manager was being very gracious in not addressing the fact. He's got some charts that show the difference in what we've asked the county employees to do and the cuts we've made at the county level that the city hasn't had to do for the last 3 or 4 years. In the first year of the recession, they took like a 3% increase in COLA. I'm not suggesting that city employees don't deserve the money, but perhaps they need to sharpen their pencils at the city in the same way that the county has. so that it's equity in government. And that what we should do is not penalize the taxpayers when we have an opportunity to reduce property taxes across the board, we should take advantage of that opportunity and return to the taxpayers what we shouldn't have been taken from them in the first place.
Yeah, I think you need to clarify that, though, that's the city of Sanford, because I think Broadway's.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant, I thought it was inferred, but yeah, it was City of Sanford I was referring to about the COLA increases, not the town of Broadway.
I think we need to make is the fact that 82%, something like that, of this sales tax revenue is created within this corporate limits.
So how many Food Lions do we have out in the country, and how many Home Depots and how many Walmarts? To me, that's a silly comparison, because first of all, municipalities don't levy sales taxes at all, Doc.
I understand that.
They don't levy that. And so that's a business hub where everybody in the county goes to Walmart and goes to Lowe's, but that doesn't necessarily mean that because most of
Well,
those
let's
are
make it a
collected.
point of where the funds were.
Yep. But Doc, we don't know, I mean, that's an amorphous thing, it just happens to be where the businesses are. Doesn't mean that it's even county citizens that are purchasing it there. I mean, people from all over the country buy in different places, and they're gonna go wherever the stores are. The location at which they buy something is irrelevant about where the taxes are, the tax fund should be distributed. It's sales tax, and it accrues, and the county makes the decision about how it's to be distributed. I mean, it doesn't mean that there's a greater need in the city than there is in the county. It's just like there may be greater need for water out in the county than there is in the city, but it's easier for the city to provide it at a lower rate to the city residents. It's really not a fair comparison to talk about where the taxes are generated in terms of where they should be distributed.
Yeah, I think one other point is the city had said something about meeting on the 11th, but some of us already had prior commitments. So if they can meet another date, then we can coordinate dates.
Well, why don't we set a date while we're here today?
Well, I don't know, I wouldn't want to set a date without,
Well, we got Broadway people here now.
well, Broadway's here, but we don't have Sanford
We've been
here.
trying to get together for a couple days with Broadway folks.
Yeah. So,
Well, it'd be great, I agree, I think the joint board meeting is an important thing we do, and it'd actually be great if it's a tripartite meeting with the town of Broadway as well. My schedule will permit me to go to the one on the 11th, and I think, Richard, if I'm not mistaken, you also were planning to attend that one, correct? And we certainly wouldn't speak on behalf of the board, but as individuals there. But I'd be glad to carry back any communications that they have, as I'm sure Richard would.
Well, I can't make it tomorrow. Do
Right.
they still have that meeting, John?
They did not advertise the 2:30 meeting. So if you were going to show up at their meeting, you'd have to show up at 1 o'clock
Okay.
to their law and finance meeting.
Well, the thing that I want to come out of this today is for citizens, no matter, taxpayers, whether they live in the city of Sanford, whether they're in Broadway, whether they're in the unincorporated areas, to really get engaged during this whole budget process and really ask some tough questions about how their monies are being spent. And I will say that, the 6 years I've been on this board, we've seen from time to time when the state government pulls back some of the funds that we've used for schools and whatever in the past, but instead of us threatening to, we're gonna raise taxes to generate that lost revenue, we've tightened our buckles and we've made do. And so I just wanna close with saying I'm very thankful that we have the county manager and the finance director that we do. I wouldn't trade either one of them for any other county manager or finance director, or anybody's city manager for that matter. I think we've got the best. And so, any other closing comments before I entertain a motion to adjourn?
We're gonna address this issue again on Monday.
It's actually on Monday, the vote is there, so there may be some citizens who maybe have watched this that have some questions to ask either of us or of their city council members. So I'm hoping that maybe that will happen.
So we're not gonna be able to meet with the city of Sanford between now and then?
If we can, I don't know that the votes will be there. I think I've counted the votes, and I think the 4 against doing this right now are pretty strong, but I still think that, it's worth a good discussion. John, do you think there's a possibility that we can meet with the
well, you gotta give up 48-hour notice, so the earliest you could meet with either board in its entirety would be 5 o'clock on Thursday, and then you have all day Friday, and we start at 4 o'clock on Monday, with the CIP review. So you could meet before
The
that.
schedule, Friday the 13th is pretty much wide open, so if that works out for anybody.
I'm still of this opinion. I welcome the opportunity to discuss change. But this is short notice for everybody. We could have talked about this last year. We could have had this same kind of discussion the first part of July or January or whenever. But we're right here at budget time, and I think, at least for me, that there are some things that all the local governments in this community are going to have to look at and reconsider if this change takes place.
I find that comment a little bit unsettling because I tried to introduce this topic to be discussed at a Board of Commissioners meeting 6 or 8 weeks ago, and you voted against even discussing it.
I don't even remember you doing that.
Oh, I did.
If I voted against it, it meant I was against it because it is still right here at budget time.
Yeah, but it does. I think we sometimes we're in danger of.
I'll move that we cancel it now.
I thought we weren't going to make any motions.
Yeah. Now this is the kind of meeting that really disturbs me. I had no idea that I was walking into a meeting where motions were not going to be accepted on the subject matter. I had no knowledge. I didn't have any knowledge of this arranged meeting before. I learned after getting notice that it was already in place.
When I sent Gaynell, did I not say that it wasn't the intention to take any action? It was just a fact-finding meeting that I was requesting that no action be taken? Did I?
I've never attended that kind of meeting before.
Well, we have actually had several meetings where we don't make any motions. We have
You
joint
know
meetings.
everything about everything.
No, sir, no.
Let somebody else
But
speak.
I have a pretty good recollection of budget meetings that we've had.
Okay, this is not a productive conversation here, so
Madam Chair, let me ask you a question.
I move with adjourn.
I've heard that you've had a meeting set up with the city of Sanford, and when we asked for one and they didn't respond. Tell me something about that. I'm like you, I hear this, I hear that, I want to know the facts. Did we make an attempt to meet with the city of Sanford over this issue? Was there ever a formal conversation between our manager and their manager, or between anyone, as far as that's concerned?
John, between managers,
Did we try to set up a meeting between the two boards? No.
and I did not get to my knowledge, get a official notice of the meeting they're going to have tomorrow either, so.
Madam Chair,
There's been
I
a meeting
move
tomorrow.
with, I move with adjourn.
I don't think so. Okay, motion's been made to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
I'm still on that. I mean, that's no.